All right, welcome to Racin' and Stuff. This is our third episode now, and special day, Chris. This is we're going to be also showing this on we're taping this, hopefully showing it on a couple of local channels around the area. As usual, I'm going to go through this one more time. If you haven't listened to us before, we're Racin' and Stuff. We talk about racing and other sports. My name is Doug, and I'm here with my friend Chris. How you doing today, Chris?
Doug, I'm actually not so good.
What's wrong?
I have something that I've been thinking about for a few weeks now, and I really need to confess something.
This is a great private place to do so.
I've given him a little trouble the last couple of weeks, but I'm actually, it pains me to say this, I'm a huge Kyle Busch fan.
I knew it.
And not just that, but I've also been hiding something else.
What's that?
I don't like the Cubs. I'm a White Sox fan.
Oh my goodness. By the way, if you believe any of that, you should check what day it is, because we're recording this on April 1st.
Fools.
All right, that was our own stupid little joke.
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry, you have to do it. Morning shows did it today. You just have to do it.
I suggested that we say you like Kyle Busch, because the other joke would be that I don't like Junior anymore, which I refuse to even say.
Maybe next April Fools, Doug. Maybe next April Fools.
All right. So last week, or not even last week, 3 days ago, Sprint Cup race at Martinsville. Now, last week we talked a lot about how we both were disappointed by the race at Bristol. So would you say Martinsville lived up to the hype of being the short track and the big race early on?
I definitely think it was a better race.
Is that because of who won?
I'm a human,
Jimmy Johnson
so yes,
won.
partly. But I really honestly do think, I mean, maybe it had something to do with we actually got to sit down and watch this race and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I really just think that I think that the racing was better. I definitely think the finish was better. I just felt like it was more interesting overall. I don't know. I'm gathering that you don't think the same thing.
Well, it was a pretty good race. It got a lot better in the last 200 laps. There wasn't much, because we had the whole rain thing going on Friday and Saturday, and because of the fact that all the practices got rained out, the first 200 laps there was no real feel for the race, if you know what I mean. And if you watch racing, you know what I'm talking about, which is what I'm saying is, how every race has a certain feel to it. It's either really weird, or it's typical, or it's just exciting, or whatever. And it didn't really have an identity for the first half of the race because of all the goofiness from the couple previous days with all the rain. But once Hamlin and Johnson got going, especially Hamlin's restart with 50 to go, I'm sure if you watch racing, you've heard about it. That this is it was a great restart. It was probably the best part of the race, in my opinion, just watching him go at it.
And what made that even better was it's such a short distance, short straightaway. Mm-hmm. The fact that he was inside, he had gotten below him before they even got to the turn.
He cleared the lapped car and then dove inside him in a span of maybe.
The lapped car was Kyle Busch, so I'm wondering. That's all I'm gonna say.
So wouldn't Kyle Busch wouldn't it be more advantageous for him to actually stay with Johnson and maybe rub him against him a little bit?
Because Johnson was in the lead at the time. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking how convenient it was on the next restarts when Denny Hamlin was in the lead and he conveniently didn't fall back as quickly that time. So
well, I would certainly hope any teammate would do that for their teammate. But okay,
comes back to Kyle Busch.
We're talking about
Kyle Busch had a bad race. We don't need to talk about
Actually, I want to ask you something about Kyle Busch, and this is kind of something I've mentioned. Not so much ask you, but I want to pose this question or this theory, okay? He reminds me, of Tony Stewart from 2002, 2001, 2002 time. And I don't know if you know what I mean by this, but he wins, he does really well, but every so often he has an incident that I wouldn't even call it an incident with him, but there's always some sort of controversy that happens every few months, on track, off track. And we saw it again at Bristol with him parking his car after the Busch race in turn 3. We saw it again kind of after the truck race where he, on Monday, after the race he parked his car, got out, literally ran the length of pit road, jumped over the pit road wall so he could walk right out the track and all that. I mean, he had these little incidents, and the real question for me is if he cuts that stuff out, does that make him? I mean, let's just say from a couple years down the road, he's still running as well, but we don't have any of those. The last time one of those happens has been 2 or 3 years. Would that make him more popular?
My
You had a spasm. You just had a spasm. The idea of Kyle Busch gaining any popularity.
I don't know. I mean, my thing with that is I feel that all of the great drivers, I mean, Darrell Waltrip, Rusty Wallace, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, quite honestly, all of them went through the much hated state. They all did.
They did. That's kind of the point I was making.
And I think 5 years down the road he will be popular? Yes, I do. I just think that everybody thinks he's kind of a jerk right now, and he does. I don't know him personally, obviously. He comes off as
he does a little bit. Even I think he is a bit, but I see these little things he does, and I just go, will you get your act together?
Well, and
so
I think,
people will stop hating
maturity,
you so much.
I definitely think maturity is part of it. It's kind of like what happened with his brother and how now he's like supposedly greatly matured. And I mean,
the only reason we think Kurt Busch is matured is because we don't see him much these days because he hasn't been running well the last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I do think that he's. What is he? 20? He's my age. He's 22. He's a year older than me. 23, something like that. He's like 2 years older than me.
Yeah, he's not much older than us.
And as much as mature as I think I am, I don't know if I was thrust into the national media spotlight and something like that. How well I'd handle it. So I do think he will be popular. He'll eventually cut it out. He will. He's not going to be 27 or 28 and still doing that. I wouldn't think. I don't know.
Well, and the only thing is, I don't want to make excuses for any of his behavior, saying that he's too young or something like that, but there is some truth to it. I don't like the idea that it's like, oh, you're 23, so that means you can do certain things and all that. And again, the only sample we have is what we see, and we see things like this, and it rubs me the wrong way, but I don't get upset about it because I watched Stewart closely for those years, and I watched him. I mean, what was the last time Tony Stewart had an incident? He's no longer considered the bad boy because when was the last time he did something?
Yeah, and obviously he's shaken that off because now he's a successful, arguable owner, and
the fact that he is an owner and that somebody basically said, "Here, take half, free of charge," that's what it is. And the fact that he's very marketable now. He had no problem finding sponsors for his car in that team.
I mean, I think all those drivers that we named that were some of the best drivers in NASCAR history that went through the hated stage were for different reasons. Obviously, I don't think Jeff Gordon was ever the bad boy. That's not why he was hated. He was hated because he was the golden boy.
Yeah, if anything, he wasn't rough enough.
Yeah,
you kind of want that area.
Because that was about the time he was from California.
Or Indiana, depending on what week it was.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put that. But you're right. He was too. Honestly, I think so many people were shaken by the fact that he was, quote, too perfect.
Well, and he came in. He was the young dog biting the old dog with Earnhardt. I mean, basically their career paths kind of lined up perfectly. So it was almost like a passing the torch. Like 94, Earnhardt wins number 7. 95, Gordon wins number 1. By that time, Earnhardt was starting to come around with the people again. And
but definitely by that time he had kind of almost passed that hated stage. So it had gotten to. It was very symbolic of passing the torch.
Yeah.
Which is also funny because, as you know, and any casual NASCAR fan even knows that Richard Petty's last race was Jeff Gordon's first race, which is also very symbolic.
Yeah, symbolic. And only thing about Petty though is that his career was over a good 10 years earlier. Well, not 10 years, more like good 8 years earlier, but nobody knew it, and you can't tell Richard Petty when his career is over. Then again, Richard Petty can't tell you when his career is over because he wasn't allowed to retire for so many years.
Yeah, you're right. He was not running. I mean, I think that day he was involved in a wreck, but that day he wasn't running. He was like 25th.
He hadn't run well in a long time prior to that year. It was a good 3 or 4 years since he had run well, and even then, it was 8 years since he had won a race. He had an 8-year winless streak to close out his career. That's the greatest NASCAR driver ever. So that's the funny thing that that amuses me when you see things like that,
And we had talked about that. We had talked about that on Sunday.
We were talking about Gordon. Well, how long Gordon would stay around.
Hanging along.
The only thing about Gordon is that he's 37. He's not. I mean, he's been, like I said, 17 years at Hendrick. He's like 37. He's been there since he was like 20. It's a long time, 17 years. But as compared to where other guys were at like year 17 in their career, like 45 and up, he's still got many good years left.
And yes, I agree. It's just it'll be interesting because I think he knows that too, and it's all on him. It's all on. We talked about it on Sunday. If he has the desire still, and I guess I hadn't heard this, but you would